Hello, my name is Robert Melso, and we're filming from the Pro-Liberty Forum, an organization dedicated to learning about American history. You can visit us at prolibertyforum.com. That's prolibertyforum.com, where you'll find useful insights regarding America's founding and history. The book is about our unalienable rights, and you might be tempted to correct me on my pronunciation. But as we'll see in the book, I'm pronouncing it properly. And if you're thinking that's strange, wait till we get further into the explanation of what else is inside this book. We have as our guest Dr. Thomas Giordano, who has written a new book titled Unalienable: What It Really Means and Why It Matters. There's a lot of things to learn about you. It's fascinating, I think. You are from Philadelphia, my hometown.
City of brotherly love. That's where where it all started.
You're living in southern Italy, which makes me more than a little jealous. You're a past lecturer in human anatomy, physiology, endocrinology, hematology, toxicology, and laboratory analysis.
Don't forget OBGYN, obstetrics and gynecology.
You're a contributing editor for 3 peer-reviewed Index Medicus journals.
That's correct.
And you're a featured lecturer in several continuing medical education courses. My first question is, why would a doctor living in Italy write about this book?
What I wanted to do was put a collection of lessons, stories, life lessons that my father gave to me as I was growing up, which taught me the importance of the American experiment, basically defining the American experiment. And I wanted to do it as a, let's say, a memoir, but also a monument to my father, something that could be transmitted to the generations that follow him, to understand basically where he was coming from, his understanding of America, and why he loved the country so much. My father was an educator. He was a professor of business administration and economics, and he was a very, very erudite, well-instructed man. But he was also a very moral man. He was as much a student as he was a teacher all of his life. My father had a method. It wasn't where he would just say, "Hey, look, Tommy, this is this. It's not something else, it's this." He taught me the method that he used for critical analysis, starting at 8 years old. And he applied that, and he showed me that it could be applicable to anything in our lives, including economics, our concept of natural rights, our liberties, and the role of a government in a free society. And he showed me that these were the intentions of the founding fathers.
I've been taught, as most people I think would agree with, that the word is inalienable.
Right.
What's the difference, and why are we mispronouncing it wrong?
Fundamentally, you have to understand that the Declaration of Independence, is what we're talking about, was written in 1776. If you were to go back and look at the lexicon of words in 1776, inalienable is not a word that you would find because it didn't exist. The word is properly pronounced unalienable. Now, you say, unalienable. The root word is not alien. The root word is lien, which means to bind to something. Everybody knows what a lien on their house is. It is a claim, an economic claim on your house or your property or whatever. Now, when they said unalienable, what they intended was that it was not subject to transfer or commerce without your permission. There is a great difference in meaning. It's not just semantics. There's a great difference in meaning between inalienable, which means it can't be taken away, and unalienable, which means it is not subject to transfer or commerce without your permission.
Now, I've always been taught that my rights
Right.
cannot be taken away.
Right.
But in the book, In the book, you say they can be taken away.
Of course they can. If you're arrested for a crime, you pay your crime, your debt to society. What is that? Your debt to society is you abrogating your natural, personal, civil, and political rights because you violated the natural, personal, civil, and political rights of someone else. It is a payment. So the fact is that basically your natural rights can be taken away. All you have to do is be arrested. Swear an oath to the Constitution. Become a member of the military. You don't have civil rights like everybody else does. You're subject to a different law code. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason for the change in the implication of the word.
Give me some examples of what this word unalienable, how it impacts us with regard to our relationship to our government.
Okay, well, let's go back in history a little bit. Just imagine you're in the late 1700s in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden you get word from London that you have to put a stamp on every single piece of paper that is circulating in the colony.
Wouldn't sit too well with me.
No, and that stamp is 4 cents, 4 pence. Put that stamp on a deed, a newspaper, a pamphlet, anything that is written material that requires a piece of paper, you have to have a stamp put on it. Now, the colonists would have looked at this as being tyrannical. Why? Why was it tyrannical? Because you're placing a lien upon a natural right to commerce. You're placing a lien upon the natural right to disseminate information. It is, the colonists would have looked at this, in my city, Philadelphia, they would have looked at this, Ben Franklin would have looked at it as an abrogation of his alienable rights. Look, there is a long line of reasoning that goes all the way back to Socrates, Plato, through Pericles, through the Greeks, the Romans, and everything, and into the Roman Catholic Church. The very fact is this: we believe in natural law. We believe that natural law is the source of our God-given, unalienable rights. All right? Now, look at today. You were placed on this earth for a short period of time. You're not here for an eternity. If you choose to work, that time represents your life. If you earn a wage in exchange for the time that you're giving to perform a task, there's no profit there. What you're looking at is an even exchange, time for money. That money represents your time. That money represents your life. When a government edict comes down and says, you owe us 40% of your earnings, what they're saying is that you owe us 40% of your time or 40% of your life. That is servitude.
But doesn't the government need funds to function? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are legitimate reasons for taxation, and they are spelled out in the Constitution. There are only 3. Only 3. The purpose of the government is to secure our liberties and our lives. That's its only goal, right there. The 3 ways that it does this is to wage war against aggression, foreign aggression, to wage peace. That is to maintain peace internally. That is to protect me as a citizen from you. We do that with the court system. And the other is to maintain a level field for commerce. It says it right in the Declaration of Independence. That's our mission statement. The Constitution of the United States doesn't say anything about protecting those in need. That doesn't appear. There was a short period of time during the American War of the Rebellion. That's how the government calls it, the War of the Rebellion. They don't call it a civil war. That it was raised to 5%. But then it was immediately dropped after the war. So why is it today we have to give 45% to the operations of the government? They were giving permission for taxation only for the role of government, which was wage war against aggressive acts, maintain the post roads, those kinds of things. The only contact you would have had as an American citizen with the federal government was your mail. That was it. That was the only importance it had.
Let me go on to something in the book that I found a little fascinating. You um, tell a story, a historical record of your father in a street fight in Philadelphia. Now,
Right.
what does that have to do with Unalienable? And why did you put that in this book?
Well, there was an organization in Philadelphia before La Cosa Nostra that was called the Black Hand. They attempted to extort money from my grandfather, who ran a tailor shop in South Philadelphia. Well, my father and his brothers didn't agree with having to pay what they call in Italian a pizzo, extortion money for protection. So they took things into their own hands and they resolved it. In other words, they believed that their grandfather had an unalienable right to, provide for his family and to run a commercial operation without the interference of a couple of thugs trying to come in and extort money from him.
It was a pretty violent scene in the book.
Absolutely. What good would have, the police back then and during the Depression in the 30s in Philadelphia, they wouldn't, they wouldn't have responded. The fact is that if you do not defend your rights, and they're being assaulted at every angle, even by the government, if you don't stand up and defend your rights, any thug that's walking down the street can think that he could take what's yours. Robert, you have to understand something. The government is a fiction. The government doesn't exist. Only people exist. The government was ratified into existence. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't make decisions. It doesn't go to the bathroom. It doesn't do any of these things. It is a collection of words on a piece of paper. Now, to us, our form of government, our Constitution, which is the working papers of the government, our Declaration of Independence, which is the mission statement of our government, is the most sublime document of governance ever written in the history of man. There's no question. People occupy positions of authority in the government. People are corrupt. People make decisions. If you and I were walking down the street and we went up to a person and put a gun to his head and said, "I want your money, give me your money," nobody would deny that that is an immoral act. And it's an immoral act that it requires justice. You're coercing them with the threat of violence to take what doesn't belong to you. Now imagine, if you will, that we go up to the person and we're from the IRS. And we say to you, "I want 20% of your money. I'll decide how much money you give me." Is there no threat to your liberties? Is there no threat to your property, which is your life, as I described before? Is there no threat of sanction, of jail, of confiscation of your goods? Isn't that a violation? But the thing is, now imagine, if you will, I walk up to you in the street and I say, "Hey, Mr. Melso, there's a guy over there that needs some help. Could you voluntarily contribute something to helping him?" There's a difference, a great difference, because the decision then falls upon you. You could say, "Yes, okay, here's 20 bucks. Or, "No, I'm sorry, I don't have it right now," and walk away. But there's no threat. There's a voluntary interaction. If I were in government and I come up to you and, with the threat and all that, and I take your money and say, "Well, I want the money because I want to help Joey Bag of Donuts over there," it doesn't matter what your intention is. What your intention is with that stolen money. The fact that it was taken against your will makes the entire transaction immoral.
Well, I knew Joey Bag of Donuts. He grew up in my neighborhood.
Yeah, he grew up in my neighborhood too. We must have been.
Well, okay, let's finish with this. And we'll have you on again, by the way. Who needs to read this book and why? Who needs to read it?
Well, that's a very good question. If I were, my initial impulse would say any parent. These concepts I have found are just, the thought of the unalienability of our rights, that they do not come from a government. They come from our humanity. It's just not being taught in school. It's not being taught. When you see over 50% of millennials that say, yeah, it's a good thing, communism, socialism, yeah, I wouldn't mind living under that kind of a government. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no historical perspective. And it's not their fault. Your conclusions are only as good as the information you have. If you don't have information, if you don't understand what the founding fathers of our country did and understood to make the American experiment the greatest experiment in human history. I have studied all the way from Herodotus to Thucydides in their original languages, okay? I've studied the history of our Western civilization, and the founding of our country was the culmination of all of that thought through the concepts of John Locke and Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill and all these great thinkers. You see, the founding fathers, they were well-instructed, God-believing people. When I hear people say, oh no, they were deists, oh no, the first 10 are negative rights, like that's something negative. Negative rights are the best thing that we ever had. They are rights that were granted by God, by our birth. They're our inheritance. It is positive rights that you have to fear. Return to your question, who's this for? I would say when you're talking with kids, anybody from 5th grade on, and I would not stop at postgraduate studies at universities, because I have heard some things come out of people's mouths that supposedly have, advanced university degrees that just don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, I've read it, and it's very readable, and it is a collection of short stories, and I found it fascinating. So we'll have you on again, and in the meantime, I'll just announce that the book will be going on sale at Amazon.com, and you'll see it. It's called Unalienable, and the title is Unalienable, What It Really Means and Why It Matters. Dr. Giordano, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.